Hi everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be back to Luis' platform. I have been part of your media and comms course, journalism course. It's a pleasure to bring a bit of like my view or things that I've seen in terms of like future trends and things that are really interesting here at FT that we are developing as much as new things that we are looking at in terms of new platforms to reach diverse, new, younger audiences. So as rightfully the moderator was mentioning, I am part of a business development team, so I'm not a journalist. My background is a bit more in business and economics. Then I moved into sociology, but my focus here at the Financial Times is basically try to generate new revenue streams that are outside of the core business model of FT based on content. So it's anything that will leverage on a new and different touch points with our users across the globe to make them experience the Financial Times on different platforms with different formats and with different perspectives. Hence, future trends, technologies, there is a lot to say around the data world that is behind the paper that really developed our business model to make it a sustainable one. When I talk about the business side of newspapers, but most of the time and the media groups might be a bit boring, but to me it's really exciting, and I really encourage the audience to look at the what is evolving on a merger and acquisition, on an equity side in the media groups space, what big media groups and media enterprises are buying in terms of new services and new products that, startup and technologies out there can offer them that maybe you cannot internalize completely within the media group. The business side starts, and why it is so important and vital for the good quality of our journalism is that gives, of course, a bit breadth to the newsroom as much as the ecosystem itself to be able to play with, experiments because they have budget. But this all starts with a healthy business model. The healthy business model is based on the fact that you are paying for a service, that the service is a good quality journalism. To make this in such a, chaotic news world as the one we are facing today, it's really tricky, but also I believe for the younger people listening today, it's an enormous career growth space. So to look at new opportunities for your career in journalism within the ecosystem of the business side of the newspaper, I think is something that not many people that are interested in the news and journalism world look at, but is a very interesting space. Newspapers like FT look for business minds that can join, the BD side to really think about future trends and where our users are and how to intersect with their attention. We are in the attention economy. We are in the attention space. Hence, it's really important that we understand the audience first. What we have seen in the past decades has been really the change from being a content is king, content-centric business models to audience-centric ones. This doesn't mean that we offer more of the same of what the users are saying on Twitter. But what we are here mentioning and thinking is how we can be more of use of our users that are not passive readers as it was in, the mass media space. Now we are in the network society and we need to, again, intercept the attention of this crowded space. When I'm looking at future trends and things that we are developing, especially with my team, of course, are on formats and platforms that now are a bit of a buzzword, like podcast. When we started it 5 years ago, it was a bit of a, a blurred area where we didn't really think there was a lot of commercial outcomes out of it. That's not what the media space demonstrated today. However, what you definitely see as well is the gaming space, and I find it very exciting. Exciting in which terms? That you can combine learning with having fun when being on a news platform and a news space. When you look at why and how Gen Z interact with news and information, you get a clear feedback from them that is, we want to learn, We want to know what is needed to be known, but also we want to have fun when learning and knowing new stuff. So bringing an intimate tone of voice, as you can do on formats such as one of the newsletters that is on the rise since a bit now, as well as the audio, but then entering a new complete space as the one of gaming is something that has been really intriguing for the Financial Times. I don't know if you had the chance to look at the Uber game years ago, but we keep developing once a year in partnership with tech companies, so it's not developed only internally, but shows interdepartmental collaborations and skill set collaboration between the newsroom, editorial knowledge of the news, the information, with a new space that is the one of making a bit more democratized the access of, for example, trading information. What does it mean, the trade war between the US and China? What happens now with the Russian situation? Putting these into a new format as the one of gaming has been something really interesting. We did a few experiments during COVID, especially in the last part, where we got, for example, the metaverse experiment of an interview. I'm not a huge believer that the metaverse is still there yet. It's still there, I think, for traditional groups as ours. There is a lot that we need to study and see the implications and implementations of this new ecosystem as the one of Meta. Definitely open to experiments and do new stuff in that area. But I think that solidly we have seen the ludic, so the game space, learning while having fun, as something that is really meaningful for younger audiences. And we are experimenting quite a lot. Yesterday, we just launched, for example, a podcast that has, the name is The Talent Show, that has really the function, the role of being fun for under 30 to know more about specific topics, to learn how to upskill their career while also having an intimate audio experience with the expert. What we are doing differently is that the audience comes along during the podcast, so they can ask directly question a bit into a forum ecosystem, as you can do online, into the show of FT and the FT Talent, and ask directly questions to the experts. I think it's not a great tech trend or innovation. It's more, I think, a mindset change, a mindset twist within the FT, within the traditional business, being more of use for our users, specifically the under 30, with the new technologies, but above all with new formats and new platform, especially the social media one.
Thank you very much, Virginia. I know that you're in Russia. Do you have time for one question?
Of course I have. I'm here for you.
Okay, thanks, Elisabetta.
So the question comes from the chat. And how do economic journalists filter sociological research data to prevent the spread of fakes?
I said, thank you, Anna, for your question. And I think in terms of I cannot speak for my colleagues, journalists, because I said I am on the management side. Definitely, I think if there is one rule here at FT, is not being the first one to give the news, is to give the correct one. Without fear, without favor. That's our motto. And definitely there is quite a filtering mode at the FT in terms of research and in terms of editorial board and rules that make sure that we are not spreading the fastest news, but the most accurate one. If there is one thing that I think it should be very clear is that if our users and readers are paying a premium price for information, they should have a premium product and service. Hence why the kind of filter sociological research data, I think it's more of the tools they are using and comparing different sources. But that's really at the basis of how good journalism should be done. In terms of a data tool, I can come back to you, Anna, if you write me on LinkedIn or wherever you prefer. And I can ask my colleagues if they have a specific platform or tool they are using, if this might be of your interest. Definitely, fake news news is a huge problem, but I can see that this mantra of not being first, but being the most accurate is definitely something that is keeping us away from any, mistakes around giving the wrong information. We definitely do mistakes as every human being, but I've seen a bit less than other media groups that wanted to just be the first one to give the news.
Thank you. Thank you. And the other question is there any specific business model that should be taken into account in media in general?
Yes, so definitely when I was talking about business model, I didn't go in details, but I can do now thanks to this question. Thanks for asking this. It's audience centricity. What does it mean? It's basically leveraging on your audience data without exploiting them, but basically leveraging, what I mean is making most of use of what the users is telling you through their behavior on your platforms. We can track that not just through cookies, but it's more like through the subscription system. We can track what are people's behavior, feedback, comments, and above all, quality time, that is mainly our KPI of success for the newspaper. What do I mean by that? It's not being led by volume, reach. Oh my God, I got 2 million views on this article. That's fantastic. No, it's more the quality time. It's how much time people are spending on my ecosystem and are interacting with my ecosystem as the FT1. Being able to track this and giving a score to each reader and each subscriber through this model that you can investigate, is publicly shared. The name is RFV, Recency, Frequency, Volume Data Model, gives us scoring out of each single users and can elaborate literally a score for each person that will give them an engagement mark score. Based on this engagement, we can elaborate different engagement strategies that will allow us, of course, to either acquire them if they are on trial and make them stay, or retain them on the longer term, and also offer the right product at the right moment for these users. What's the behind the scenes of this business model is that you start from audience data rather than the request of what you think the market needs. It's really the user's behavior on your ecosystem telling you in which directions you should be taking, of course, the reader. This, again, is not with a mindset of I see that everyone wants to read more about X, I give them more of only X, because otherwise you turn into a filter bubble ecosystem. It's, of course, all balanced with that serendipitous modality of reading and experiencing the beauty of a newspaper that you used to do it when you were, moving the pages. Now you're scrolling. It's giving you more of what you need, but also extra things to learn from. And you can do this with a combination of different engagement scores, quality reads, etc. Data analyst team, the data team, is the major catalyst of our subscription model success here at the Financial Times. It started 20 years ago, so it's not an overnight success. It's something that started again 20 years ago as a model change of the way the newsroom was structured. And I think it's really important to think about data as really the major golden trigger of innovation and change in our newsroom and our business in general.
Thanks. And we have another question, but tell me if you have still time, otherwise we will...
I have 5 minutes and then I unfortunately need to run.
Okay, so we will read quickly and then you can answer.
So,
yeah.
Aside from what's been mentioned, aside from what is being mentioned, how does the FT use the data they have on users into their format?
I think basically it's in how does the FT use the data they have on users into their format. I think it's more like getting feedback on what can be most engaging for our users, depending on the different groups. First of all, one important thing that might be interesting, we don't store age. So we don't, we can assume based on the job roles and job positions at the time of subscription or free subscription. If you're at university, Luis offers you for free, for example, FT subscription. When you got this subscription, we get your data and we assume your age, for example, based on time of registration and your job role. We can offer different things in terms of formats for sure. In terms of like, are you more of a newsletter reader? We can trigger you that, because now, for example, that's just a development last week. We are able to track the time and engagement as well on newsletters. So it's something that we have been developing and is actually under development, but it's actually key to understand the newsletter users. But it's quite different from what it happens on ft.com. It's a very different users and more different from the one of the FT podcast. That is another one. First of all, let's remember that all the podcasts are for free. So very different users. We go for volume, but we also always want them to stay in our ecosystem. That basically is this. So entering in the paper and staying in the paper. So tracking this behavior is quite interesting in a better understanding how we can tweak new products based on users' needs. Focus groups are key. Let's not forget that data are also stored by meeting the users and the readers virtually or physically. It's very important that we get this session, I think at least once every 3 months, if I remember well, where we ask directly to our readers what they would improve, things they would like to see more. I'll just, as I have 3 minutes, I'll just take the opportunity to also answer to Elena that was asking another question, just so we don't waste the time reading it. But basically, the kind of is a very interesting one, because she's asking about the same journalist basically needs to be a polytechnical talent. It needs to go from writing the articles, making the adaptation to the different formats. And I think her question is, do you have different professionals in charge by the different formats you have and post-editing, etc.? That's a good question, because I think when we're thinking about the media enterprises development, what is intriguing is like you have so many new job roles and job opportunities for especially younger talent, because the journalists, that's my belief, that's my personal view, is not FT one, but I think FT would agree. The journalism acumen, writing good articles, it's still the core business, and we should have journalists that get paid to do just that, of course with an adaptability mindset. If I'm talking into a podcast, I need to have a very different tone of voice if I'm doing a long form interview or article or lunch with FT. However, I think what we are seeing is the hybrid talent on the rise within newsrooms and beyond. First of all, the newspaper, the media group is not the newsroom, is not just the newspaper, it's all the different departments that work in collaboration to make the most possible quality paper out there and news product and service. What do I mean by that is that if I'm thinking about adapting an article or a content for an under 30 social media campaign, it will require a very different talent and person to cover that than the actual journalist that writes the article around how to save in your 20s. I think it's important to consider that, and this is something that maybe, in Southern Europe, are we not seeing yet. We think that the journalists should be covering all these different aspects, from video editing to audio editing to writing the articles and doing Twitter live. Of course, yes, but let's not forget about the quality of the news. And we should have different talent that covers all the different aspects of the user journey. And if we think about our business model through user first, it will be so much easier also to understand what kind of talent is needed and who would we need to hire for the different touch points with our users. So from a talent in a social media campaign, from graphic design to gaming, it's very different talent, from data to tech. Of course, this requires investment. So I finish my little chat here a bit in circle, because I go back to the beginning of what I said at my first point. Without a sustainable business model of a newspaper, you cannot have a product that is at pace with what is happening in the world and what is needed in the different touch points with your users. So Investments first are required for your healthy newspaper, because you will need to hire different talent with different perspective to be, always updated and at pace with your user base.